Hey everyone, thank you for watching my talk. My name is Manuel Guimarães, and I'll be presenting a work that we've done in the later stages of 2018 and early 2019 about the impact of virtual reality in the social presence of a virtual agent. And so we started this work by having a simple thesis that interacting with an intelligent virtual agent in an immersive environment will have a stronger impact compared to the same interaction in a non-immersive platform, or at least a less immersive platform. And for that, we designed a social skills training scenario, in this case, a police interview with the help of experts. And we also performed the study using that environment, focused on presence and believability of the virtual characters within that environment, right? First of all, I hope you all know what an intelligent virtual agent is. At least it's in the name of the conference, right? And it's a computer-generated character that can engage in realistic interactions with the participant. Most commercial ones are the ones that we already know, just like Google Assistant, Siri, Alexa, among others, and all of their interactions with the participants are usually using voice. So there's not that many room for nonverbal cues, which are really important for a social interaction. We were looking specifically at intelligent virtual agents and social skills training environments. In the case that I highlight here, it's about the ECHOS project that uses intelligent virtual agents to try to combat a little bit the autism spectrum patients and to help them engage in social interactions using an IVA. We were particularly interested in combining both the extended reality technologies that have been coming up in recent years, such as augmented reality and virtual reality, and social skills training. For instance, here on the left, I show work that also has high functioning autism patients that puts them in a virtual environment using virtual reality, and that also helps them perform social interactions with other virtual characters that are children, so they can practice their social interactions like this. Additionally, on the right, typically people with high anxiety disorders have trouble finding jobs because the job interview provides such a big barrier for them to get into. So on the right, it's another project that is about practicing job interviews against intelligent virtual agents to help diminish this anxiety and help them practice normal job interview practices. So over the past decade, it has been proven that virtual reality is a really effective social skills training platform. Not only effective, but it's also quite efficient in terms of money, and it's also a really good medium for social exposure. Additionally, these environments must be really careful because they must be able to offer safe, repeatable, and diversified scenarios. The repeatable part is quite important because the users benefit from assessing what they've done wrong in past interactions. Before I get ahead of myself and we start talking into the study and about the environment that we design, we need to talk a little bit more about immersion and presence. These two concepts have existed for a long time, and they're not really separated because one needs the other, and it's pretty much a gray area between the two. However, in this work, we will use the Mel-Slater definition, where immersion essentially captures the degree of which a platform can deliver an inclusive, extensive, surrounding, and vivid illusion of reality to the senses of the human participant. And for presence, we will use it as a dimensional construct that captures the extent of which the user feels present in the virtual environment. What this essentially says is that immersion captures the ability of a system to trick you, that thinking that you're feeling that you're somewhere else, and presence captures how much do you really feel that you are somewhere else. Additionally, the scientific community has defined three distinct categories of presence. The telepresence, which is the extent to which one feels present in the mediated environment. So it's about a lot more the space around you, if it feels that you are in a different dimension or not. The self-presence, which means that if you're experiencing yourself in another reality, how much is it you? How much do you feel like it's you? And finally, the social presence, which is the one that we'll be focusing in this work, that relies to the sense of being with another social being. And this is quite important because, first of all, immersive virtual environments have been shown to generate greater feelings of telepresence compared to non-immersive ones. However, the same does not appear to be the case for social presence. In fact, in a systemic review conducted by Catherine O, focused on social presence and immersion, they found 10 different studies that compare these two dimensions. However, only 2 of them found significant differences between social presence between 2 different immersive platforms. And these two studies that found these differences were using 2 human participants as they were collaborating on a puzzle solving task. And this is important because it has been shown that so we want to do it, but with an intelligent virtual agent instead of 2 people. So social presence, as we've shown, is a subjective experience. It's particularly relevant in a social skills training context, and increasing the immersion of the medium does not necessarily increase the social presence of its actors. And these are the main motivations behind this work. Now we move on to the interaction scenario that we designed. A police interview. At the time, we were working in the RAGE project with our police officers here in Portugal, and so we started talking to them to see what if we could use them as experts and to try to design a social skills scenario. And in fact, they do need it because they need to practice, for instance, instead of job interviews, but police interviews. How do they interact with the suspect, and how do they deal with this? And so we essentially did perform this. And so the experience is set in a virtual room where users play the role of a police interrogator. And I can show you a brief example, or a quick example in this case. And so this is the scenario as if it was being played in a computer screen. I can, just like if I was in virtual reality, I can select any object within the scene, and I can open it and I can interact with it. And once we press start, the virtual suspect will appear in front of us. And then we can interrogate him using the notepad on the left. So we can click it and we can see the questions that are over there. And essentially we can interview this suspect. All right, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so how do we create an IVA for social skills training? Well, the virtual suspect is modeled using Fatima Toolkit, which is the tool that we use here in GAIPS. I'm one of the people responsible for it, so it was straightforward, this decision. And essentially the questions are by participants' affective mood of the suspect, and the angrier he is, the less information he will be willing to share to the players. And consequently, also when he is angry, he will be more angry towards the players as well. I would love to show you more, but I don't have time to do this during this presentation, so I encourage you to read the paper. Additionally, us working with the police officer school gave us a realistic but fake script that you can see here in the image. There's also some metrics that we have on the right where they do an aggression value for some of the questions. And essentially we had to pick this up. It has 250 different lines of dialogue. We had to make a state machine essentially to say, and we had to filter by topics. And so essentially we ended up with this initial dialogue tree, but when you put it into Fatima and when we process the whole dialogue, it ended up being like this. We have 200 different lines of dialogue. And if I zoom in the beginning, so here the police must make an introduction to the suspects before. So this is why the first state is called introduction. And then depending on his response, you'll go to some state or the other. Additionally, there's an ask for a lawyer, which is if the virtual suspect is too angry, he will immediately ask for his lawyer and he will not give any more information. Moving on. We can now talk a little bit about how was our evaluation method and our hypothesis. And so, as I said before, we had the first hypothesis, which is social presence levels of the virtual suspect felt by participants in virtual reality setting will be higher than the ones in the traditional computer setting. And the second one is regarding believability. We also believe that people would feel, or participants would feel, that the characters would be more believable in virtual reality compared to a traditional computer setting. We also need to talk a little bit about what is social presence in terms of actual values. And Frank Bioka and Chad Harms actually, we will use their definition. So they deconstruct social presence into 6 sub-factors. The first one is co-presence, which is the degree to which the observer believes they are not alone or secluded. The attentional allocation, which addresses the amount of the attention that the user allocates to and receives. The third one is the perceived message understanding. So if the participants understand the message that is being received and sent by the interactants. The fourth one is a perceived affective understanding relating to emotions. The fifth one is a perceived affective interdependence. If my emotional state is affected by the virtual suspect. And finally, the behavioral interdependence, which is if my behavior is affected by the virtual suspect or not. And so Frank Bioka and Chad Harms also described the questionnaire based on these 6 different factors, which is essentially 36 different questions. So 6 questions per sub-factor, using 1 to 7 Likert items in total. Also for believability, we use the believability in video game potential scale, described in the words of Gomes et al., which is essentially 5 different or 6 different Likert items, 1 to 5, concerning the behavior of the agent. So questions like, is he predictable, is he not predictable? So the study we conducted, we used 31 participants, 16 in the first condition, 15 in the second condition, and the results were the following. In terms of social presence, on average, users felt a higher level of social presence compared to the ones in the traditional, so users from the first condition compared to the ones in the second condition, which is a traditional setting. So essentially, our hypothesis 1 was confirmed to be true. And these are all, if we deconstruct all the sub-factors, we'll have significant differences in 2 of them, in the co-presence and in the perceived affective understanding. In the perceived message understanding, while it was close, it was not significantly different. In the believability scale, we did not find any significant results. Our hypothesis 2 was not confirmed. There was a significant difference in the suspect was coherent question. And I think in the suspect was predictable, it was also quite close. However, there were no significant results here, despite the high values of the believability. So our overview, hypothesis 1 was confirmed to be true. Hypothesis 2 was not confirmed. And when we increase the level of immersion of the platform, the social presence of its characters increased. Additionally, we also had quite believable characters in both of the conditions. So we can talk a little bit about this, is that our thoughts are, first one, this scenario antagonizes immediately the virtual character, which we realized almost instantaneously, but we wanted to keep true with this study. And because particularly in the emotional and in the behavioral influence, in these sub-factors, so the social presence asks for, do they change my behavior or not, or is my emotional state changing because of the virtual suspect or not? Well, if the whole goal of the game is for you not to be affected, then they won't, right? So we won't get any particularly interesting results here. Secondly, we should, just like any good study, this raises a lot more questions than it answers. So we are already looking at the future, because I think this provides a really good baseline or a good starting point to perform a lot more studies around this. For instance, what if we changed a little bit the immersiveness level of the platforms? For instance, what if we use augmented reality versus virtual reality? In the same way, how about if we change the believability levels of the character? What if we had characters that didn't react to what the player was saying compared to the ones that we have already right now? And so, concluding, we designed the social skills training scenario of a police interview using experts from that field. Our results indicate that participant perception of the social presence of virtual characters is higher in the most immersive platform, in this case, virtual reality. There was no significant difference in the believability. However, the believability values were quite high, which we think also backs up our claim. And then the experimental design encourages further work on measuring the effects of social presence and believability on the design of intelligent interactions. So our further work and what we've been starting to do right now is to try to, so what studies can we do starting from here? And thank you so much. And this is me, Manuel Guimarães, and this was my paper. Thank you.